Okay, good morning, everybody. All right, so things did not disappoint in the market overnight. We we were bought again yesterday on the open, went up into this resistance area. We did fail there, but we're continuing higher this morning. Things were pretty wild. I don't know how many of you were watching the futures, but we started going into the election results real strong. We were up at 338, 339. Then, when it started to look like the results weren't a strong Biden win, we reversed hard, went negative. And then we went positive again when it was pretty, not that late in the evening, it was 10, 11 o'clock. I don't remember the exact time. But since then, we've just been going higher. And for those of you who haven't been following too closely, what the numbers and percentages and prediction markets are saying is that Biden is most likely going to win when they finish counting the votes in these last few states. But at the same time, it looks like the Democrats have no chance of taking the Senate. Historically, U.S. markets have been strong when you have divided government. Remember Clinton's second term, that was probably one of the greatest time periods ever for the market. We had the internet bubble. But you had divided government when the GOP took the House and the Democrats controlled the White House. So House of Representatives, one of our legislative branches in the U.S. If you're not familiar. So looking at this morning, before we even get in more to the details, for those of you who spent a lot of mental energy and time and emotion following this closely overnight and didn't sleep, you really want to be careful today. Not to do too much, watch, observe, especially since when you have large gaps, the market can be tricky to trade anyway. And this is a very large gap. We're gapping up on the SPYs over $5. We were up over $6 when we hit the blue line earlier. And so that's, you got to be careful with these large gaps. Let's see how things settle in the first 30 to 60 minutes. And then perhaps some good trades will set up there. So in terms of bigger picture, we're right back where the down move started from a couple of Mondays ago. Remember, we had the support area here above 340. We breached it, or we gapped down on this 2 Mondays ago. We breached it, and that was the beginning of this downtrend here. And then over the last few days, we started talking about what would it look like if we climbed back up. And so that's already played out. We've talked about after the election, once there was more certainty, we would have strength, although it didn't quite play out the way I think most people were expecting. Pretty unusual, but the market is moving higher here, and the burden now is on the sellers to show that we could even close, at a minimum below 340. But like I would even say, 338. So I'm thinking very constructively on stocks. In terms of us being able to work our way back up to these prices in the near term, unless we close below this 338 level here. And if that happens, maybe we can roll over a bit and test this area like the low 330s or something like that. But right now, buyers are in control. And remember, a lot of managers, fund managers are waiting for the election results and to put more money to work. And those results have happened. So you might get some people to chase. I don't see why people would be chasing all the way up here. I'd want things to come in, closer to 340, 339, in the high 330s to really start to put some money to work. But if people are thinking that event's out of the way and the market, going into next year is going to make a new high, they may be less reluctant to commit money. So that's kind of where we are. Seeing the pre-market. The first time we spiked to the blue, I did short. The second time we came up here, I had a little uh-oh moment, but it's we failed there again. And the first time we failed here, we pulled back, I guess, to around 341 and a half. So what I would be looking for now is, now that we're starting to form a little bit of a pre-market downtrend, is can we start to hold for more than a few minutes below 341 and a half? If we can, maybe that will be the beginning of a pullback into 340, and then we kind of see. We go to earlier, let's see where we were. Earlier in the pre-market, we did poke our head above to 340.50. And that's kind of actually where I have a bid to cover into this right here, remaining short position. And so then we'll kind of see. On the Qs since yesterday evening has been showing relative strength, and we are back above 280. So we went from underperformance to overperformance in a hurry, right back up to this resistance area. And it even looks like we touched 286. I wasn't looking as closely on the Qs as the SPYs this morning. I would think this would be a very tough nut to crack. Remember, we were just down at 268, so that's $18. Around 7%, over 7% in a couple of days. Let's see. This 282.5 seems interesting to me, 282.5 to 283. If we start to pull back more on technology. So I'm going to see what we've been doing in the pre-market. Okay, so we did break out there from, so we did get to 282.5, move sideways for about 15 minutes before the next leg. But that would be the area, on an area where I'd be looking for a better risk reward entry on the technology via the Qs. And we'll see, we'll see if we maybe double top, go into this range and then come back down and see how it behaves at 284. But a slice below 284 right on the open, I'm looking at 282.50 to 283. And then in terms of the in-play stuff, I didn't see a lot of good, fresh news stuff. We did have the proposition in California pass. There was a law in California where they tried to make all of the gig workers into employees under employment law, which changes the whole business model and kind of crushes the Lyft and Uber business models. But they had a referendum and people voted to say no, they're independent contractors. So that was really good. Positive reaction from Uber and Lyft on that. And actually, as I'm talking about it, Lyft is starting a second move from the pre-market, getting to our first potential resistance area, 31.5 to 32. So if we zoom out on the 30-minute, so you can see this was up at 40. When was this? So this was early June, sold out from 40 to 28. And then they had this range here from 28 to 32 for a while before breaking down, I guess, late September into October. So we're back inside of this range. You would think this would be a tough nut to crack right here, or at least close above it. Maybe things go crazy for a little bit, and it actually even works its way up to this resistance here, which I put on the sheet. But you would think that it would have trouble closing above $32 today. It's spent a lot of time in this consolidation range, and it is just one market. People might start to think, well, other markets, if they're going to try to classify them as employees, they'll have referendums as well, and we go from there. It's the same thing. It's the same idea in Uber. I just decided to use the levels in Lyft rather than Uber. And then I guess TAN, the initial gut reaction from people was to sell the crap out of it, because without a Democratic-controlled Senate, the Biden really can't do a lot on clean energy. So, maybe they'll negotiate some sort of deal, but it was kind of sell TAN first and ask questions later. It did rally back pretty hard from the support here in the pre-market, all the way back up to potential resistance, and did fail into that. Actually got inside of his range. I did also see the healthcare names reacting pretty strongly to the idea that with divided government, they can't, assuming the Supreme Court doesn't overturn the ACA, the Obamacare, that's going to be really good for some of these healthcare names. But they're very difficult to trade, UNH and the others. But they are gapping quite a bit. Let's see where we are here. Okay. So you can see how much volume we got. We got 300,000 shares. So about 13% of average daily volume already. I don't have a strong view on this. I think, the levels that I put on 66, I put on first support, just because people really came in and bought this thing right back up to this potential resistance. And so, the good risk reward is down here, but maybe it'll make a higher low. It'll leak below 66 and start holding back above, and you can play it into this where people are long from down here. You would think people would sell after the open. If it slices right through above 68, like it did in the pre-market on volume, then people are going to just shrug off this news and it's back inside a range. And remember, on any time frame you're trading, when something moves back inside of range, it has a tendency to, well, you can see once it goes in range, it goes back and forth inside of the range. So that tendency applies on all time frames. So that's on those things. Then secondaries and technicals. Yeah, I just prefer to trade Lyft. I don't think Lyft is Uber is anywhere close to its all-time highs. Right. I'll take a look at the pot stocks for you. They've been pretty strong recently. So let's just quickly go through these secondaries and technicals. So NEO is really starting to remind me a little bit of, remember our friend JKS last month when it started to go vertical and we had the 30% pullback? So, I mean, it's early, it's starting to go vertical here. Last month was JKS, and had this trend, and then it went vertical, and then mean reverted, came back into the 50s. It's now consolidating here. I think it has a chance to go back into the 70s, so we'll see. It was a little bit weaker this morning, I guess, on the election gap down, but it's right back above 60. So getting back to NEO. Anytime something starts to accelerate to the uptrend, what we always do is we go to the prior day and we look at the prior day's high, the prior day's afternoon support, and we use those levels. If something gaps higher and then kind of reverses inside of the prior day's range, that's a potential reversal day. And the more it gets extended, the more vertical it gets, the more fun it is in terms of the pullback on a percentage basis. So let's see. So hopefully this will keep on getting even more vertical. It was strong yesterday on the, I guess on the news of the reason it gapped up in the pre-market here was the entry into the European market. We actually talked about, I guess, in yesterday's morning meeting, we talked about buyers stepping up, sellers stepping down. And then I kind of drew which way is it going to break? Is it going to break this way or this way? And what time did it break? Broke at 10:30 to the upside and then closed at the high, continuing higher. So I put the pre-market high there. That's a level. Above that, there obviously is no real levels because it's a new high. And in terms of the support, all I did was use this. It looks like I just covered the SPYs on a $2 pullback. So these levels here are what we're using in terms of judging whether or not buyers are still in control. And if we extended this trend from yesterday morning to now, it also lines it up with this level on the game plan sheet. We're on the 30-minute trend from yesterday, and so maybe you get that again, and then it gets above 38, and then maybe it just goes completely vertical. But be prepared for either direction. And just follow the levels we have from yesterday and the trend that formed from the prior 2 days on the 30-minute once it broke to the upside. So that's on NEO. Babo was pretty good. It did actually retest the pre-market low right on the open. I was able to get it there. I didn't think it was going to have then immediately go back up to 290. It did go up there pretty quickly and moved back in range. So I tightened things up a little bit today. It's 292 and 294. Maybe this will stay in range today. Tighten up, stay between 284 and 294. It would be great if we got a little bit tighter today and tomorrow got a little bit tighter. I mean, obviously it's subject to any news coming out about them being able to list the Ant IPO. And if it does, it could be back above 300 pretty quickly. But until we get that piece of news, better for a tight consolidation and then a play of the break. Just want to zoom out to see where we are. Yeah, it's still in the strong longer term uptrend. PayPal was pretty interesting. I feel a little bit lucky that I was able to make money on the short side in it. So right on the open yesterday, it failed at 180. You can't see it on the 30-minute, which I used to short it. We had discussed that in the morning meeting. That was, I think, R1. And it dropped $5 immediately, but it reversed really hard. So you can see here was the quick spike. Was able to short into the spike. It came off $5 pretty hard. Was able to cover the last few shares down here. And once it got above 180, I'll say it did flag. It was pretty clean break on the second leg. So if you were waiting to see if it could hold above 180, you got this tight consolidation here. All this little red bar was a bit of a shakeout to the downside before it went up. For those of you who are newer, remember, whenever you get a flag like this, and if it breaks one way and then on the next bar doesn't follow through in the initial direction and goes back up, usually that second break is a much higher probability because you got people leaning the wrong way on this red bar. And so when it goes back up here and then starts to take this out, there's a high probability you can break to the upside. So looking at it for today, let's see what we did. Okay, so it's gapping up with the market. It reversed pretty hard from 188. I could see this, this one I could see consolidating in this area for a while. 180 seemed like a pretty good price for it based on they had good numbers, but the guidance wasn't great. And so, as long as it's between 180 and 190 seems kind of reasonable to me as I zoom out further and further. And you definitely, the sellers, I guess, technically are still in control as long as it can't close back above 188 or so. So that's what I'm thinking about that. Yeah, pins were still long from the pullback to 57. It's gapping up. My thought is that, if it can, it's already pulled back a little bit, but if it got really extended today, you probably want to get flat at $63 or something like that, and then play it, pull back higher low above 60 or so. But again, what we want is closes above 60. If we can get a couple of closes above 60 here and then a break to the upside, I think that would be really clean on pins. And then let me just quickly, I do know that the marijuana stocks have been, okay, I know we talked about them. I don't think we talked about them yesterday, maybe a couple of days ago. So CGC, okay, so that failed. Then I guess there was probably a bunch of referendums around the country, and so that's impacting them a little bit. Maybe that's why this is gapping down. I just think you want CGC to be closing above $20. And even yesterday, it pulled back, went it flushed below 20 and then closed above. It needs to have some closes above 20 to feel good about it. Otherwise, I wouldn't be buying in unless it was at the support area in the range. Until, right, people are still trading this. I guess it could come back. Was it down at $1 or something? Where did it come from? I mean, it's still in obviously a very strong longer-term downtrend. One of our most watched videos over the last few years was when Shark was talking about his short from back up here. I think a few 100,000 people watched that. It was funny seeing people picking fights with the guy who's makes millions of dollars a year, better than 99% of traders. He knows what he's doing. Anyway, that was a tangent. And look, I have no idea what the intrinsic value of this company is, and I could see why people, it came back up to $10. It makes a higher low here. Maybe if it gets above $7.50, I don't think it's going to become Neo and go back to $25, $30, but you never know. You never know. So it's double topped here at 7. Yeah, so that takes care of that. Quickly on Tesla, it's already come off about $7. So, I just think it's back inside of range. So I thought if it got, to 440 this morning, maybe it almost did get to 440, I would sell some more of what I picked up on this pullback below 410. And just keep on trading in this range. And if it ever closes above the top of this range here, above 450, then start to think about maybe buying some 470, 480 calls and look for that move to 500. But until I see some closes above 450, I'm just going to continue to like sell strength when it moves into the 430 to 450 area, and buy weakness when it goes down to around 400. And anytime it goes below 400, get really aggressive buying. And then there was DKNG. So I gave up on this one below 40. And it did. I know people kept on trying, and it has turned the corner. It has, it's trying to change. So let's take a look at it. So it double bottomed here at 35. It's back up to here. So there potentially is a lot of resistance right here. So what you want to see for this actually to go up for real, it's back up to kind of where the final down leg happened from now. And so what you want to see is a close above 40, even if it fails here today, pulls back in, stays above 38, maybe does some work in this area here for a couple of days, and then does something like that. And then, it can work its way back up to 44, 45, maybe even 48 eventually. But this is a good move right back into resistance, potential resistance. So that is that. And just on the final question, or I'm not going to actually answer Aaron's question because he didn't address it to everybody. But on most of these ideas we share in the morning meeting, generally I don't have a strong bias either way. Like the other day in NEO I did a few days ago, thought it would pull back to 32. But generally I'm just identifying the prices where buyers potentially could take control. That's why we have inflection points. And playing up to the resistance areas. And then if I see selling at resistance and failure, playing it to pull back down to inflection, and if it's holding below inflection, down to support. And most stocks do not trend. Most stocks, we identify where they're gapping to, we find key levels of resistance and support, and we watch how they trade off of those levels. That's short-term trading in a nutshell. As always, be patient and good luck.